And we are live. I am Justin Lomnist, the Lunatic Libertarian. I am with my guest, Angela McArdle, and she is running for Libertarian National Chair. And we are here in the Lunatics Asylum trying to figure out what's going on with the Libertarian Party on the national level. How are you doing tonight, Angela?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
I'm very honored to have you here. So let's get right into it. What brought you to the Libertarian Party, and what made you liberty minded to begin with? And then where do you think our national party should go?
Okay, that's three questions. What brought me to the Libertarian Party? What made me liberty minded to begin with? And where do I think the National Party should go?
Yep.
Okay, so what made me liberty minded is kind of interesting, I think, more interesting than what made me libertarian. I grew up in the South, and my father was a minister of a Christian and Missionary Alliance church. And one of the experiences that I had very early on was hearing stories from missionaries who came in quite frequently, and they would stay with us, speak at the church. And what I heard over and over and over again was all of the horror stories about foreign governments persecuting Christians for religious beliefs. So I was taught very early on to be highly skeptical of government. We heard about, the Chinese government torturing people, the same thing happening in Vietnam, in Africa, uh, silencing people in the Soviet Union. And like I heard some really disturbing stories. I got to meet people who escaped Pol Pot's killing fields after they'd been thrown in and nearly murdered, people who ran across the border to survive. So even as like an 8-year-old, I was like, oh, the government, the government's so evil. So that's how I became, liberty minded. I grew up in a pretty, Republican-y, like traditional Southern home. And I became a libertarian after moving from Texas to California and getting a little bit of a culture shock, right? And thinking, well, like I'm still conservative, and I'm talking about my perspective as a teenager, by the way. I'm still conservative, but I don't think people should go to jail for weed, and I don't really care about gay marriage, things like that. And I remember having a conversation with someone else in my social circle, who we all looked up to as older and wiser, and he said, "Oh, you sound more like a libertarian." And I thought, okay, well, I've heard of that word. We just talked about it literally a couple more minutes. And I thought, okay, I'm a libertarian. That's comfortable, has the word liberty in it. It's still guns and things and hating the government and taxes. And it wasn't until I had read The Creature from Jekyll Island, which completely imploded my worldview and woke me up to the dangers of central banking, that I became more intellectually interested in libertarianism after being, traumatized. And then when I heard about Ron Paul running for president, I realized there's other people who are also traumatized by central banking. In fact, there's a large group of them. And I guess, like around that time and going forward, I was much more active in anarchist circles, especially left anarchist circles, which everyone's always surprised to hear about. But in LA, those were the people who I saw who were most politically active. So I kind
Okay.
of palled around. I palled around with those people, and I was always like the lone weirdo with a job. And eventually, through a lot of my activism with those people and working on things like cannabis initiatives and other like liberty issues, I became acquainted with the local LP. And that
Okay.
was around 2013 to 2014. And I think I attended just like a couple of meetings sporadically and kind of like fell out doing my other political activism stuff, and then got reconnected with them in 2016 before the presidential election and just started participating locally.
Now, do you think that the LP right now is where it should be, or because we got to get to where you think the LP should go in the future, because you're running for the top seat to run the party. So, where do you think the LP stands right now as far as its local elections to its federal elections, and where do you think the state affiliates are going to be at with the? Do you think that the LP national should be over the state affiliates, or do you think they should still run independently, kind of, or? I mean, do you think the business of the LP is really pushing public policy to get people elected on the local level so that we can grow internally to the government?
Okay, local, state, and national. I'm sorry, I'm literally taking notes of what you're asking because that was a lot.
I know I load questions up, and I'm not trying to throw you off or anything. This is just what's running off my mind
Yeah,
because
no, it's
my
good.
mind is just boop, 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 boop.
I want to make sure I answer all of them. That's why. I think that based on my own personal experience in California and knowing people all over the country, I think that most of the local affiliates are doing a phenomenal job with the resources they have. And I think that most of them need more resources, but that they're on the right track. They're very politically engaged. They care. Uh, they're involved in their communities. And I think that's really fantastic. And it's what we really need to get a grassroots liberty movement going. So I have a lot of respect for local affiliates. I chair LA County's Libertarian Party. It's really where my heart is at, which makes it really kind of difficult to transfer up to national because I really enjoy what I'm doing. But I've been doing it for 4 years, and I think that it's time to pass on the reins because I don't think that people need to take literal ownership of their affiliates. And I think that that is something that you risk when one person is in charge for too long. And I think that about state and national levels as well. I think that we have some really solid state affiliates, like a lot. And I think that over the past like 4 years, I think that things have been improving really dramatically. And I think that's really great. And I think that it's been done primarily without the assistance of national, because I think there's a large disconnect between the national party and our state affiliates, whether it's bottlenecks, information gaps, lack of communication, just overall dissatisfaction. So, for example, during the lockdowns, the state affiliates were the ones that came out with really robust messaging, political activism. National just totally dropped the ball. So I would say the state affiliates were great. And no, I don't think that national should control the state affiliates. I think they need to wield influence, but the way that you do that is by providing resources to state affiliates and assisting them, not by stepping on their toes or, for example, sending out email campaigns about things going on in states or state candidates without consulting with the state or the candidates. Like that's not a good move. Yeah, I think that national is moving in the right direction, and I feel very optimistic. I feel very optimistic about it. Things were looking pretty abysmal a couple years ago. Not a single message about being locked down for an entire year. Totally embarrassing and shameful. Really, really sucky. But when vaccine mandates came out, they did start speaking out. And a lot of people were critical of how they did it. They didn't think that it was strong enough. They weren't crazy about the message that came out, like the video that everybody was trying to crowdfund. I hear all those criticisms. I think they're valid, but at the same time, I want to recognize that there was progress made and that we should also acknowledge that. We need to acknowledge the good with the bad.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you think that we are reaching enough people as far as the messaging on either on social media or face-to-face interactions now that COVID, for the most part of the country, is people have grown to the idea that COVID is going to be here to stay regardless of what you do. So do you think that we're reaching enough people? I know that there's a lot of people on the ground across the country that are on podcast or talking to people individually on the streets or trying to campaign individually. I mean, there's a lot of people out there working. So do you think that we should recognize those people on a broader scale? I mean, there's a lot of complaints that the hard workers aren't being recognized as well.
So do you think we're reaching enough people? And do you think the people who are doing the work are getting the recognition they need? Is that kind of
Yeah, because when I look at some of the social media threads, sometimes it's like, oh well, it's like it's kind of hard, It's like there's a lot of people that think that, oh well, this and that, and I don't want to really go on to that, but I'm because you're going to be running the party on a national level. It's like, do you think we should broadcast everybody what everybody's doing, or do you think that we should just keep just working and moving forward? It's probably like a more condensed portion of the question.
So I don't think we're reaching enough people because I don't think that we know how to do that. So at this point, we're so late in the game. I don't think it's anyone's fault. I don't think it's worthwhile to cast blame and say it's this person, they did a sucky job. I think that institutionally, we're not totally aware of how to do what we're supposed to be doing. And so to that end, I think we need to have a better understanding of marketing, demographics, demographic and marketing segmentation. Those are things that I don't hear anybody else talk about. We need to understand how to market more effectively, who we're actually supposed to be reaching out to, what avenues and channels to get our message out. It's not all social media. Surprise, a lot of voters don't pay attention to social media when it comes to what they put on the ballot. And a lot of voters don't always notice us. They don't know how to look for us on social media unless we make the news. So I think we need to provide some resources to help people understand how to actually get in the news. There are a lot of state affiliates that really excel at it, and a lot of other state affiliates that don't know what they're doing because people have come into leadership positions brand new. They don't have institutional memory. They're doing the best they can, but they need a little bit more help. Do I think that people who are doing all the hard work get the recognition they deserve? I mean, I don't think so. This is a challenging one though, right? Because it's highly subjective. So who deserves what? How do you get what? You know, what is enough? I think that we could certainly do more at the national level. And I see that our candidates get retweeted on, you know, the LP national account. I appreciate that. But I think that we can do more. And that's probably going to be another marketing and demographics thing where we start to understand how to elevate them and how to do it in the most meaningful and purpose-driven way. And how do we connect, you know, candidate A over here with issue number 1 over here? How do we like really maximize that? And that's definitely something that I'd be working on at the national level.
Excellent, excellent. Can you hear me okay now? And people in the comments.
I can hear you. You're a little fuzzy, but I can hear you.
Can I get a comment that everybody in the comment section can hear me better? I don't know what's going on with my mic on the broadcast. Yeah, on this set.
I just see the comments now. You're fuzzy, but you're not unintelligible. Hang on, everyone. We'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. Keep tweaking that dial.
Testing, 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 testing.
You're a little staticky still.
Test, test, test.
It's not so much you, it's your connection. Like I can hear a little sizzling.
Yeah, I don't know what that is. Let's see here. Audio.
Now you're totally silent. What we're doing right now is a lesson on how to fix a mic on a live stream, which is actually like a really stressful thing, but we're making it informative for you all so that you can understand how to do interviews. Totally silent still. Still totally silent. I should probably be taking all of this time to plug my website and my Patreon and all that stuff. So we'll just roll with it.
Let's see here.
Oh, I think we have good sound.
You can hear me now?
Yeah.
How about everybody in the audience on the it's terrible. It's tolerable. Robert said it's no sound.
Robert's a tough critic. I think you sound fine.
There you go.
Ta-da!
We're good?
We're good.
All right. Sorry about that, ladies and gentlemen. That is the very first time I think I've ever had a technical difficulty. So I had to adjust on the fly. And Angela, you did a terrible job plugging yourself while I
I
was
did.
having problems.
I
But
did.
yet again, we gotta go on the instinct. So let's get back to it. Now that I can speak, um, yeah, I think that if we were to go out and do the same thing as participation trophies or anything like that, I think we're just sending a bad message. I think that if we actually recognize, like, is it really an incentive to go out and work harder? I don't know. I think that the people that have been in the party for a long time have gone out and done the work for a long time, and they just did it because it's a passion. You do it because it's a passion. I've gotten into it because it's a passion, because we all want to be free. I think that what you're saying is great. I think that what we can do on a national level is not in my power. It would be in your hands. And I think that as a leader, I think that in my personal opinion, that we're moving in a better direction, and the participation across the country is growing because of everybody like you. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now, what do you want to do as far as, like, if you were elected to the national chair? What do you want to do with the party in your first couple months, in your first 6 months? What is your plan moving forward with the national party?
Okay, so we're going to do some things that are boring and some things that are exciting. We're going to kick off a major fundraising plan, which I will be announcing and releasing in Reno. I know a lot of people are concerned about the party's finances. They've seen donors drop off. They've seen a lot of issues. And to be fair, a lot of that stuff happens in the midterm election cycle. And that's something that we need to anticipate and learn to work with a little bit better in the future. We're going to do a financial audit because there are a lot of programs that have money promised to them, and then people pledge money to those projects in addition to that, and it doesn't seem to build on top of the budget. They seem to just count on faith that donations that come in after the fact are going to be part of the budget. Things like CRM, Frontier Project. There's a lot going on. People are worried about staff salaries, so we're going to do an audit. And it's not to blame anyone or make anyone feel bad, but knowledge is power. We have to figure out how we're spending our money and spend it more wisely. We are going to be definitely changing our messaging and doing a messaging campaign. And we're going to do that to increase our fundraising and to grow our membership and to increase our engagement and raise our profile with people that are more likely to vote for us, volunteer with us, help out our candidates, fundraise, donate to us. So we're going to hit the ground running. In order for us to really pull all this stuff off and pull it all together so that we're not stepping on each other's toes, duplicating work, pissing off our state affiliates, we're going to start out with some basic strategic planning stuff. And that's something that I've already worked with a lot of the other national level candidates on. Just, simple SWOT analysis. What are our strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats? What are the obvious things that we see that are wrong in the budget? Where can we save money? How can we do that without screwing things over? How can we do all this stuff without engaging in massive organizational disruption and freaking people out? It's a real thing, and I don't think it's discussed nearly enough in our organization, is that we don't handle change management well. Change management is the process of taking your organization in its current state, which might suck or it might just be less than ideal, and moving it to a different state that's better and higher functioning. And you want to do that by securing people's buy-in, and getting people excited about change and understanding it and having them participate and help carrying it out. And oh my goodness, making sure that it's continually implemented and constantly monitoring things. Are we doing the right thing? And heaven forbid you're not. It's okay. You got to change course. So
Do you think people get complacent though sometimes when they're in an organization for a long time and they see the status quo? I mean, one thing that I was taught is never to be comfortable in comfortable situations.
yeah,
Always be uncomfortable.
I think that they do get complacent, but I think also, even more so than that, I think people don't know what they're supposed to do. And so even if they're not comfortable, they kind of perceive as though, well, I'm doing the best I can, I'm doing what I should be doing. Because when I first got involved, the first position I held after running for Congress was I was California's state party secretary. And I got training on how to use our CRM and like some basic duties, but I didn't get boardroom training. I wasn't really sure what I was doing. I'd been on a couple of very small nonprofit boards, but we didn't do much. We did, quarterly meetings on the internet, that sort of thing. I would review someone's copy edit, you know. And so, how do we know how to work together, how to resolve conflict? What are your responsibilities? How do you maximize your productivity as a state party secretary or chair? No one knows how to do any of those things because no one talks about it. There's no training guide on it. There's plenty of trainings online, by the way, for nonprofit boards, for for-profit boards, and none of it's a perfect match for political activism. It can get close, but it's not perfect. So I think that we need to, before we jump in and start ripping everybody apart for doing a sucky job, like think about what hand have they been dealt. And most of the time, it's like literally nothing. Often we're begging people to fill positions and they're reluctant and they're like, I don't know what I'm doing. And we're like, we literally don't care. Please just sit down so we can count your vote. we gotta approach that a little bit differently and give people valuable training so that they can excel. And then we can come back and maybe give, oh, heaven forbid, reviews of the board, because that is something that we need to do. And I know people they're gonna have a heyday with it. Oh, I hate you, you suck. You still need to hear it. You need to hear the good and the bad.
Well, do you think centralization gets confused when you're talking about a political party and public policy? There's a separation that should be there because the organization should be organized and there should be a laid out plan, a standard operating procedure for X, Y, Z, and so on and so forth. So it seems to me that it's trying to bring the chaos into order, but maybe it's not something that everybody's willing to accept at the current time. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, so, and this again is because people don't know any better. So people confuse being organized with being a top-down, centrally planned organization, and that's not necessarily the case. We need to be purpose-driven. We need to understand why we're doing what we're doing. Start with some basic goals. We don't really have that at the national level. I think that we can all agree in the broader sense that what we want at the national level is to see a freer world in our lifetimes. That's a great place to start, right? And then how do we accomplish that? Some people value bold messaging campaigns and spreading libertarian philosophy more than they value pushing local elections. And part of that is because we haven't seen a lot of success with our statewide, local, federal races. So it's not unreasonable to say, hey, you know what, this hasn't been working out, let's try something else. But you don't actually have to have it either or. You could have both. If we are equipping our candidates properly and helping them, coaching them, providing them with resources, teaching the people around them how to run effective campaigns, and really training them to be strong messengers, you're going to get candidates who are spreading that strong message of libertarian philosophy. We're just not quite there yet. We're getting there. We're on our way.
Okay. Am I still having audio issues now?
You are getting a little fuzzy again. Yeah, I think that Daniel's right. It's probably a cable issue, which is so frustrating. But I feel your pain. I took my car to the shop today. Larger, not a cable, maybe a hose, maybe a leaky hose.
Can you hear me okay now?
You're about the same. It's the mystery. We're like the Hardy Boys over here decoding your.
Yeah, I don't know. If I have a cable issue.
We're just guessing. We're not, unfortunately. That would be an interesting app for someone to create, a diagnostic tool for you to use on the fly and figure out what's going on with your sound. Yeah, but I think, for decades, people have argued over what the purpose of the party is. Is it to win elections or is it to spread the message of liberty? And then there are also people who think that it should just be to outlaws or, whatever their pet project is. I think we can do a lot of things at the same time as long as we're organized and understanding how all the pieces of the puzzle fit together and what to prioritize and how to treat things sort of like bowling pins. You knock the first goal over and then you knock over the next, and that pin knocks over the next. And that's what I'm hoping to do at the national level.
Okay. Can everybody hear me? Can you hear me?
We can hear you. You're still a little fuzzy, but it's less fuzzy.
Okay. Sorry about the audio issues, everybody that's listening, that's not watching this live on Anchor FM. I don't know what's going on with my audio, but this is all brand new equipment. So don't buy anything from China. I don't know.
Jeez. Oh no, we're China fear mongering.
No, I'm not. I'm just joking around. The thing is that I'm just kind of angry that my stuff's not really working properly, and this is the first time. Maybe it's the NSA. Maybe it's the FBI. Maybe
it's Tony DeRazio. Tony, I'll come for you.
Oh, those are fighting words. I told everybody that's going to Reno that the Libertarian Party should have actually rented a boxing ring. So that if there's any infighting, go settle it and be done.
I just please, no, get it out of your system beforehand. Go to the gym, run 5 miles, or take the opposite approach, right? Like go out in the desert, have a psychedelic trip, overcome your pent-up rage, work it out, whatever. For me, it's a Jordan Peterson thing. Please, I just literally don't have time to fight every single person in the ring or on the microphone. Too many important things to do.
Well, and I mean, if it's going to go your way for the national convention, there's a lot of people predicting that you will be voted into the national chair. I think that you have a good direction. I'm not saying that it's going to, and the wording might be wrong to some people, but I'm not going to say that it's centralizing power or anything like that. I would say that it's more organization for everybody to have some kind of structure to figure out where they're moving forward in an organized fashion, if that makes sense.
Totally. For example, candidate support and affiliate support, 2 separate committees. A lot of the work they do overlaps. Why don't we have them work together initially to identify what those areas are so that they're not duplicating each other's work and recreating the wheel? And then why don't we have them communicate what they're doing to state affiliates? It's going to take a little bit of work because at first we're going to have to build trust and repair some damaged relationships. But once we get past that, that's going to be so helpful. And we're not going to force state affiliates to use the resources that we come up with, but we're going to make them available and appealing and make sure that you're actually there to help them, because really we should be providing a service to them. Because they don't technically need us. I mean, I hope that doesn't happen, but if state parties were to disaffiliate from national, they can keep doing their thing. So part of my goal is to make this enticing. Hey, you want to work with us? You want what we're offering? A lot of the trainings that Kara Schultz puts on, why don't we put those online, and then you can get them with a login and watch them on the internet, and then we can expand and have more trainings and maybe not run Kara quite so ragged as she travels the country, although, I don't want to say we're not going to send her out because she seems to also really love it. But let's take some pressure off of our staff while at the same time we rebuild and repair our relationships with state affiliates and help our candidates. I think a lot of these things overlap and they work together in a really good way if we're able to go about working smarter instead of just furiously spinning our wheels.
Well, and working smarter, not harder, is always probably the best aspect. If you have better tooling as a mechanic, you can work faster and smarter. And then if you have better skill sets because you've done things in repetition over and over and over again, then it becomes muscle memory and you can do anything on the fly like it's no problem. I think that is a good message moving forward. I think that's something that, because as far as I'm concerned, I have a very gung-ho attitude. I jumped into this podcast with a gung-ho attitude. I have a gung-ho attitude kind of like David Goggins. There's nothing that's going to stop me once I set a goal. And if you are in my way of actually accomplishing that goal, then I feel sorry for you, because I mean, you're either going to get sidestepped or ran over. There's only a couple options. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think what's happening with the libertarian movement, as far as a political organization, is that it's growing and it's growing and it's growing because more people are becoming aware of the government and the obstacles and the barricades. Oh, you need a license for this. You need a permit for that. You need this for this. So I think on a national level, because when I talk to people, everybody knows who Spike is as far as running for vice presidential. Everybody knows who Joe Jorgensen is. Everybody's getting out there and saying, "Oh, well, these people are being recognized," and I think that on a national level, we're going to have a big surprise coming in the next few years here.
That's curious, or that's interesting. So what kind of big surprise you think we might be in store for?
I think that we're going to grow exponentially. I mean, especially in the state of Wisconsin, I think that there's people out there that are starting to come out of the shadows of actually trusting in the ideals of being free, not being controlled, not being dictated to. I think in Wisconsin also, because I asked Spike about this in a Zoom meeting, I was like, hey, did you know that the Supreme Court of Wisconsin said that mask mandates are completely unconstitutional, and it didn't make any kind of national news or anything like that? And it's kind of just swept under the rug that we can no longer in this state ever be put in a medical lockdown, ever.
And so did Spike have a response?
He was like, I didn't know. He was like,
oh okay. Okay.
So,
Supreme Court, I mean, well, there's so much going on with the Supreme Court.
And this is the Supreme Court, not the National Supreme Court.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Gotcha. Very nice. Yeah, we didn't have that benefit in California.
I'm sorry.
I mean, that's fantastic. And what you're really seeing right now is the beginnings of very hardcore balkanization between the states. And I think that that's something that the Libertarian Party can certainly capitalize on. And it's going to become difficult to navigate for libertarian parties that are in blue states, but I don't think that it's impossible. I think it's just something that we need to be forward thinking on. Like, how are we going to message around this? Those of us who are trapped in these, dystopian big city hellholes.
We have a question from the comment section. What is that artwork behind Angela from Christopher Baker?
That right there, that tiny little thing, is a Mises Caucus needlepoint that was given to me in Florida by one of our members. Throwing that out there. But above me, that's a painting called The Garden of Earthly Delights. Okay, you're gonna get some inside baseball on my home right now. That's a compromise. It's a compromise because the wonderful person that I live with, wonderful, did not want my Frank Frazetta death dealer painting up on the wall in the bedroom right behind me. Small disagreement over that.
Well, in any kind of relationship, we all need to have compromise, even if we're participating on a political relationship. I think people need to have trust in the Libertarian Party and understand that it is an organization that's ready to take initiative in the government once they are given the opportunity to be servants to the people. And I think that's something that should be great for people to understand what libertarians are out there really to do.
Yeah, and it's interesting. So we get called selfish all the time by people who are unfamiliar with us, and the two aren't mutually exclusive, right? Like, you can do what you think is best for yourself, and it turns out that it's also best for millions of other people out there. And usually the intersection of that is to do no harm and have the least interference as possible, because we believe that individuals are smart enough to make decisions for themselves. And that's really not that controversial. Once you get into things like a pandemic and abortion and more complex issues, people start to really, try to come up with gray area scenarios and talk about the greater good and so on and so forth. But if you message it the right way, right, and you tell compelling stories about real people, I think that you can do a really good job of demonstrating that no, I know that you're terrified, you're worried about this, that, and the other, but really what you need to think, you need to trust that other people know what's best for them and that you don't. Just like they don't know what's best for you, you don't know what's best for them.
Yeah, I mean, I have people say that I'm a lunatic just because I do this podcast and I talk to libertarians. I have people say that I'm a lunatic because I never vaccinated my children for anything. I have people say that I'm a lunatic because I work hard and being a diesel mechanic every day. But I look at it as this, everybody needs to live their best life for them,
Yeah.
And when I take into taking care of a customer's vehicle, I know that that vehicle will always be on the road safe and ready to deliver a product no matter what's going on. And I'm not going to sit here and shortcut anything to meet a standard of the highest quality. So, do you think that the Libertarian Party presents a policy to the highest quality for the public?
I think we do. And I think that we need to be careful how we message that. Because what I don't ever want to communicate is that libertarianism is utopia. Yeah, because that doesn't exist. That doesn't exist. And people are they're so hesitant to acknowledge that there's going to be discomfort in the world, right? Like when I think about all of the things that we have to do, just you walk around outside, you could trip and fall and bust your skull open. What a freaking tragedy. There is no inherently safe world to live in. It just doesn't exist. And libertarianism doesn't promise total and complete safety, but it does respect individual sovereignty and it tries to do the least amount of harm. And I feel that that's really the best that we can do for any public policy.
Do you think that government dependency has gotten rid of a person's security in themselves and made them insecure in themselves to be secure in the government?
Absolutely. People are just straight up legit terrified to move through life on their own. And it's really unfortunate, right? Like, I don't think that that's healthy at all. I don't think that's a healthy mindset. And I feel bad for people. And it's like, you got to be compassionate, right? So you don't want to be a total jerk. So when someone's struggling with a health issue and they're screaming about how they need universal health care because XYZ, I really bite my tongue a lot of the time because they're speaking out from a place of like emotional and often physical pain and insecurity. But based on my own personal experience of having like debilitating Crohn's disease for several years, all that free healthcare, all that government stuff, it didn't save my life, man. Like, all it did was make me nervous, right? Like, I was nervous about if I did this, maybe then that wouldn't happen. Or I had to do this, I had to talk to this doctor. Or this doctor treated me like crap. They recommended something I didn't like, but I better be careful because if I become non-compliant, I could get, flagged on my private health insurance, which is really heavily regulated by the government, especially in California. And then I may not be able to get insured at all. Oh, heaven forbid. Like, the government is going to block me through their system. And I think that it creates an emotional and mental state of dependency that is really unhealthy. One of the most freeing things for me was just cancel the whole thing. Just fire the doctors and literally cancel my insurance policy. And it was very intense. It was terrifying. And within, a couple of months, I was almost completely recovered because there was so much fear, right? Wrapped up in all that stuff and jumping through government hoops. Once I just let go of all of that, I was really able to heal. And I wish more people would see that. But it is hard to communicate that to someone who's like a metaphorical drowning person. You are muted. Unmute. Oh, geez, we lost sound again. This has been the most exciting audio sound podcast I've done in a while.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Okay, it is not me. It is StreamYard.
It's not shame on StreamYard.
I've eliminated my mic, my headphones, my cable. It is StreamYard.
We should all tweet at them very angrily after this episode.
Yes, I've eliminated all my personal equipment other than my internet, which I don't control.
Yeah.
So,
Well, you're not staticky. You're not staticky.
all right, at least now you can hear me. What I was saying is that you touched my heart. And I told the VA many years ago to stick it up their rear end with all their medications and everything else. I was over 220 pounds previously, and borderline diabetic, taking all their medications to correct something that was wrong. What I found out that was wrong, and this was after I tried to commit suicide, was to say that everything that I thought was my purpose, as far as, oh, have a good job, get this house, do this, do that, do this, do that, it wasn't the best life for me. Once I found out that I needed to live for myself and stop living up to other people's standards and live up to my standards, it was all gravy. I've never looked back since then. I've always said that I was reborn into that new lifestyle. So I mean, it's something that you really touched me on, because when you recover from Crohn's or any other kind of illness, it's or tragedy or trauma or whatever, always remember that you can always come back. You can
Yeah.
always come.
Yeah. And sometimes you come back better. And I feel that I did. I feel like, well, honestly, I think that I did probably more effective activism and campaigning while I was extremely ill than I had done in the previous 10 years of my adult life. Because sometimes it really takes adversity and a struggle to get you to rise to that challenge. And I'm always very mindful of telling people to completely fix their own lives before they do political activism. I think there's a balance. So I think you should become aware and you should be working on it so that you don't burn yourself out. But sometimes that's the sort of thing that can keep you going, and it gives you meaning and purpose in your life, and it allows you to ignore some of the worst suffering that you might have endured. And so I think that we should definitely keep that in mind when we're dealing with people who are struggling with chronic illness in our movement.
I will always quote David Goggins: "Through suffering, you will find yourself." Through suffering,
Absolutely.
you will find yourself, and you will find out that you can do anything you absolutely want to when you put your noggin to it and have the mindset and the skill set to back it up. I think
Yep.
that is something that is, I tell every candidate I talk to, always be relentless in your campaign, always be relentless in your pursuit, because we have an infinite plane that will soon be finite for us at one time or another. And if you ever tested that ability to go to the next realm, um, you definitely understand life is finite, and you must make the best of it when you have that time on this plane. So I think that's a great thing that you're promoting, as far as, we only have so much time. We got to start
Yep.
moving and pushing, and I'm gonna say it. We need to stop fucking around and
Yeah.
preaching and get out there and, start headbutting some people if they don't want to agree or something like that. Now, that brings me up to the idea of the non-aggression principle when it comes to politics versus human interaction. I asked Joseph this yesterday. What do you think about the non-aggression principle when it comes to politics, the libertarian principle, and when it comes to human interaction? Where does that really lie?
Okay, so let's break this down a little bit. I'm going to ask a few clarifying questions. Are you talking about, like, how do you balance the non-aggression principle with things like voting and political activity? Or
Yeah,
are you
because
looking?
I think that the non-aggression principle belongs anywhere in politics, as far as when you're talking about running a campaign versus another opponent.
Oh,
Um,
okay. Well, I mean, don't go slash someone's tires.
well,
That's no.
I'm not saying to be. I mean, well, that's actually, an invasion on someone's personal property. But
Yeah.
the thing is that when we're talking about actual bringing up points of policy, bringing up points of voting, bringing up points of this, that, and the other, as far as who you represent as yourself, I like people that practice what they preach. I like
Yeah.
people that actually get out there and do it. And if you're doing it hardcore, 120%, maybe 100% sometimes when you're feeling lazy. So, I mean, if you're going to talk about it, you're about it, you're being about it. And I think that's what people really aspire to when they see quote unquote inspirational people in the world?
It's so I think I probably overthink this, but when I first heard about the Libertarian Party, I was like, oh yeah, I'm all about that. And then when it came time to join, I remember looking at the form, and I actually waited a couple of months because I saw that non-aggression pledge, and I was like, that's really heavy shit. That and it really like weighed on my conscience. It was like, you got to think about this before you do that, because you're a liar if you don't believe it. So I run through scenarios like, okay, what if you get in a road rage fight? You're yelling at someone, you pull off on the side of the road. What, have you violated the pledge? You can never punch anyone in the face again unless they hit you first. You're gonna have to think about that. What is this? How does this look? What if I'm doing this scenario? Like, my head was just like kind of spinning. And eventually I signed up and took the pledge, but I feel like a lot of us just like check the box, like it's no big deal, but it's kind of heavy shit, because I think we're the only political party that has such a really solid philosophical foundation. And I feel that for most of us, probably not all, but for most of us, like when we sign that thing, we mean it. And it really does radically transform the way that some of us run our lives. Like like if you're a hot-headed person, if you're someone who really likes conflict, sometimes you have to rethink how you go about that. But I think that's a really good thing. I think it's a good kind of pressure for us to be under.
I'll tell you one thing that the non-aggression principle is for me. I enter mutual contracts with people when I go spar them. So that's a mutual agreement.
Yeah.
We have a mutual agreement that we are going to have hand-to-hand combat and for practice, quote unquote. So the thing is that I asked Joseph this, what is the interpretation of someone's aggression upon them can always be subjective.
Yeah, it is. It is. And, it's a gray area. So I try to think of this, I try to extend as much grace as possible to other people when they're acting towards me, and interpret their actions in the best possible light. And so sometimes that means, look, this person is behaving totally, their behavior's out of line. It's cruel. I see libertarians dox each other. I think it's totally gross behavior. But at the same time, I try to think about it as though they're operating possibly from a headspace where they feel that this is their last recourse. They've got to defend themselves against who knows what. They're afraid that XYZ is going to happen from this person. And I don't have to interpret it that way. I could be like, that person's human garbage or whatever. But that's the place that I always try to start from, is to interpret someone else's actions in the best possible light, that they're not literally going after you to ruin your life because they're malicious. But I'll try to hold myself to a higher standard. So if someone treats me like garbage and I'm like, well, technically not a NAP violation, but crappy, I don't want to respond.
Yeah, it's a technicality, and the thing is that I don't understand where the mutual agreement of libertarians is to promote each other, to promote the party as an organization. So here's a challenge. For every libertarian podcast, I want a list, because I want to be able to share, like, subscribe to every libertarian podcast on the planet and automatically be able to push that button. Can I do that with every platform, everything that's libertarian? Because the thing is that it's not about the individual when it comes to public policy. It's about everybody. And if everybody has the right to make their own decisions, where does that lead us? Because it's like, okay, but you agree that we're not supposed to be aggressive towards each other as far as our personal property or the individual themselves.
Yep. I try to think about that in terms of, damaging someone's moral character, their reputation, their job. I try to be really careful to not speak about people in a fraudulent manner. And this is like a gray area, right? Like, okay, I didn't technically punch someone, but if I were to lie about someone and smear them, I think it's wrong. I think it's wrong, whether or not it's a NAP violation. Some people think it is, some people think it isn't. I don't even have to take it that far in my head. It's just off limits. Just no.
Well, and aren't we supposed to just not worry about what other people are doing because they're doing their own thing? As long as they're not hurting anybody or bothering me, they're good.
We should be, and I think that this is kind of a symptom too of our political failure. So there's a couple, there are all kinds of things that make libertarians unique. We're very individualistic, and that means that we're going to be usually more highly disagreeable than the average person on the
Right.
scale of agreeability to disagreeability, and contrarian, and possibly difficult to get along with and work with. And we're going to seek out flaws because that's kind of our brains, like our mindset. We're used to seeking out and complaining about things that we think are crappy in the world. But what I would love to see happen in the party, and I think it's going to take a little bit of time, but it's not impossible, is for us to start making wins. And then we're not going to have so much time or incentive to tear everybody else down. Because right now, what else have we got going on? We're not making significant advances politically. So instead, we spend time one-upping each other on the internet, which is totally embarrassing and just mortifying. That, like, you spent 4 hours today trying to own someone on the other side of the country who you've never met. They have family, and you're like, what are you doing? This is complete madness. But we don't have anything else that we're winning, so we might as well win a stupid internet argument. My hope is that once we start making more serious political headway and become a little bit more, I don't want to say respectable, notable,
well, you shouldn't respect Republicans or Democrats.
Right. Awe-inspiring.
So about politics. Nothing.
Right.
This is a gruesome game. It's about getting shit done. And one thing I would like to hear eventually is, what is our procedure to end the drug war?
Yeah.
Step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, strategically.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is a war. So what's your war plan to fight this battle, to fight the next battle, and then fight the next battle to eventually win the war to where there is no more drug war? What is your policy and your procedures as far as ending the war on poverty? And it just can't be the libertarian, well, if we make everybody freer, they're going to do no, that's not the answer. How do you systematically get people off the dependency of the government as an injection internally into your vein that says that I have security? How do you end that? I'd like to see everybody's plan. Everybody that's watching, that's going to hear this, you can bring this up at national. What is the strategic plan for libertarians to go, okay, we talk all this, I want to see X, Y, Z, all the way from A to Z, what we're going to do.
Yeah.
To end this one thing, and then we'll start winning some campaigns.
Right.
I guarantee you that.
And I think this is why it's so important to start locally, because that's where you can make measurable wins, quantifiable wins. So when we've seen, we've seen states legalize, decriminalize cannabis, fantastic. Yeah. And we've seen now at the federal level, it's at least been a bill that's been introduced. So now they're at least talking about it. And now we've seen cities, municipalities, and a couple of states decriminalize psychedelics. That's going to be the next wave. And I think that we've just got to keep going with that. And this is an easy thing for us to do, too. We should be working this really hard because it's already, public opinion is moving in our direction.
Right.
Like literally just take a piece of legislation, feel out your city council, go down there and be like, could we get this passed? Can we become like a sanctuary city for psilocybin? Stuff like that. What's the process? And not everybody's going to get it on the first try, but there are going to be cities that are totally open to it. And those district attorneys, by the way, they might suck on everything else. You might be with like the crappy guy that we have in LA County, Gaston. He's terrible on property crime and violent crime. I'm hoping that we get decriminalized psilocybin out of it. At least we'll get something, right? Just keep pushing. Take every little opportunity you have to move the needle in the right direction.
Hey, I live in Wisconsin, okay? I live in cow country. I think that if we were to take, and I love Wisconsin because of, we're not in lockdowns. You can't put a mask on me. You can't lock down my business. You can't do any of this as far as the government on a state level. I think this is awesome. I think that Wisconsin, as a forefront for liberty, people all around this state have the idea that I have the right to be free. I don't need the government in my business. all I need are the barricades gone. Let's make this happen. Now, if you get psilocybin mushrooms passed in California, I would like the trade industry to go between this state, because we have so many cows to produce this, and California, you're not the dairy state. We've always been a dairy state. I'm sorry. That's just the commerce that can go federally from state to state when we're talking about legalization of natural occurrences. I don't care if you call it a plant, a fungi, or these are natural occurrences. Who is the government to tell me what I can take from nature and ingest into my body? But they want to tell me that I'm supposed to inject something that somebody just created in a lab 6 months ago, and it's totally safe. Oh, we've injected billions of people. It's fine. Yep. And, whatever.
Consequences be damned.
But you don't make the decision for yourself if you I take punches to the face voluntarily in boxing. If I want to do that as an individual, that's my personal choice. If somebody wants to go out and inject themselves with whatever kind of substance there is, that's their choice. Whether it be steroids, whether it be doping agents, whatever. If you're trying to get a physical edge, or if you're trying to get a brain edge as far as, exciting all those chemicals that are naturally in your brain anyway, that's all it does. We're opening the minds of our own bodies. So I don't think that's a decision the government should make. The government should get out of my way as far as producing products that actually help mankind. I think that the government should get out of my way of producing the weather. That's one thing that is, what was it, 2020? That was a conspiracy, or 2000, that was a conspiracy. Now, if you want to modify the weather, check Wisconsin state statutes. You can get a permit, go into the atmosphere, and go do that. But we can look up in the sky all day. 9/11 happened. Nobody looks up anymore.
I know. It's so insane. Don't even get me started on barium and aluminum particulate raining down on me from the sky.
Yeah. Magellan's disease is not a real thing, right? It's something that's made up. But we can talk about all kinds of stuff. I mean, it's kind of funny when you talk about ground mass farming, the pH level, the alkaline level, the soil, ecosystems dying, yada yada yada. But as far as this conversation, we are at minute 57 and 30 seconds. Can I get an extra 5 minutes just for sound problems? Are we good with audio? Everything is good in the comments? We're good?
We're good. I mean, you're a little staticky, but it wasn't like it was before. It's just a little bit here and there.
Yeah, I don't know what that is, because it's got to be the internet or something like that, because it has nothing to do with my equipment, really.
I'm blaming StreamYard.
I'm going to blame StreamYard too, and I'm going to blame the NSA, the FBI, Homeland Security. I'm going to blame the Department of Agriculture. I'm going to blame the Department of Education. I'm going to blame the ATF. I'm going to blame the CIA. Who else can I blame that's a 3-letter agency?
There's more. We could blame the IRS. Like, sometimes they might work with the other ones. So we
just got off that season where we just gave the government tons of our money.
Ugh. Yeah.
The idea that liberty is the greatest thing that a person can do if you have skills. I didn't ask you one thing. What do you think of label titles and categories when it comes to the Libertarian Party? If I'm an anarcho-capitalist, or if I'm a this or I'm a that, what does that really mean to you when it comes to labels, titles, and categories?
I think it's another thing that we focus on because we don't have political wins under our belt. I mean, I'm an anarcho-capitalist. I try not to talk about it all day long because I don't think that I think it's confusing to people who aren't libertarians and who are interested. And I don't think that it's the highest priority for me to be discussing in the political arena right now. So I would love for us to obviously keep all of our philosophical views, but maybe reorient ourselves towards working to achieve a freer world in our lifetime, and arguing a little bit less on who is more ANCAP than the other person.
Well, I don't think anybody's more ANCAP than anybody because it just depends on your skill level of how much production you actually give to the world.
Right.
When you talk about anarcho-capitalism, because if you're an anarcho-capitalism, I can produce more than anybody. That makes me the greatest capitalist in the world because I'm not relying on anybody else but myself. That's one argument of that group community. What do you think about engaging individuals as far as the left progressive, the right conservative, as far as the human argument, as only addressing things as human beings and not giving accreditation to anything as far as separating human beings from whether I'm a half Hispanic, half white diesel technician, veteran, felon, urban raised, whatever.
Well, that's what we did in the documentary that I worked on called The Unseen. So the California Mises Caucus, we're very blessed to have a bunch of high quality entertainment professionals and people who are skilled in cinematography and video editing. We went out during the lockdowns and we interviewed business owners who had been shut down and impacted by lockdowns. And we didn't use terms like anarcho-capitalism. We didn't even talk about libertarianism, really. We just told their story. These people were running businesses. Some of them, the business had been in the family for generations. They got shut down. They had employees that depended on them. And we just told, this is the human condition. These people had their lives nearly ruined by government. They defied it, and then look what happened to them. And we let the stories tell themselves. And it was a really bold message. It was also, I thought, really compassionate and really truthful. And by the end of the stories, you knew who the good guy and the bad guy was. The bad guy is the government. I didn't have to spell it out for anyone. You just watch it all unfold. And I think that for really touchy topics like lockdowns, that's the best thing to do, is you just tell, what are the unseen side effects of all of this government intervention? Whose life is it ruining? Who's putting their life on the line to defend and protect their families and their employees? And that's a really good way to put out that message.
I think that's excellent. All right, we're at minute 1 hour and 2. I will stop taking all your time and talking about ridiculous things that this lunatic likes to talk about because I'm just off the wall. Just remember, most of the people out here in this country don't think that self-reliance is a thing that we need to be a part of.
Yeah.
They've given up their sovereignty to the government and raising their children, taking away their children for the majority of their youth life. Right? I think that people need to raise their children and stop giving them all their power.
Yeah.
I think that people need to have their children in their lives every single day, like humanity did for thousands of years. But I'm a primitive Neanderthal human.
I agree. I think it's the way to go.
Yeah, take the power away from the government. Stop agreeing with them. Stop complying to their timelines. Stop their scheduling. Everything else. Get out there. Be an individual. Stop relying on the government. Just go out there and get your stuff. There are people out there you can cooperate with to get your nutrition right out of the ground. It doesn't have to go to a processing plant. It doesn't have to go through regulation. It's actually grown from a heritage seed, not a Monsanto seed or a genetically modified seed. It's grown in real nutritious soil. Get out there. Expand that mind. Remember, I'm the Lunatic Libertarian. Got to give a shout out to Kelsey Lyons Designs, who actually made this for me. Go check her out, kelseylyonsdesign.com. I'm the Lunatic Libertarian. Angela, I can't even say the last name because I've been drinking too many beers because I've had a long fucking week, people. And then I had all the audio problems from StreamYard. It's not my equipment. StreamYard decided they wanted to go and shit down on the Libertarian. No. We're out here. Get out here. Vote for this woman. If you want her for the Libertarian National Chair, Reno, all you delegates, get out there, vote. Sounds like she's got a plan, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know. Get out there, vote. I'm the Lunatic Libertarian, Justin Lomness, Angela McArdle. McArdle?
You got it.
I don't know what happened with this stream. I am a lunatic. She's going to be the next Libertarian National Chair if you vote for her. I am out. She's out. Thank you very much for watching.
Thank you.